It's fascinating. Let's bring in right now, ahead of a town hall in Miami, Republican presidential candidate, former New Jersey Governor Christie. Governor, thank you for being with us. Is Donald Trump scared of you?
Apparently, yes. That's all we can conclude. He apparently is very scared of me because it doesn't look like he's going to show up on Wednesday. And I don't think, given the memo I read, he's scared of Ron DeSantis.
Yeah, well, and you know, Donald Trump, it's always about, as you and I have known him for a very long time. He's always about this show of strength. He's always, you know, very, does the macho thing. A lot of symbolism, just talking about how strong and vital and powerful he is. And yet again, I find it sorry, I can't imagine this as a politician. He's scared to show up on stage and debate you. And I do think, and a lot of other people agree, I do think it's specifically about you. He saw what you did to Marco Rubio in 2016, and I guess he thinks you can do it to him.
Well, Joe, look, if what he was saying were true, which is he's got this great record as president, and that he's so far ahead, why wouldn't you come onto the stage and take a victory lap and just lap everybody else on the stage? And you're right, he does, this is a guy who plays macho man at rallies, only people our age, Joe, understand even what that song is, let alone right. what he thinks it means to him, right? So, all I could say is this, if he believes he should be the nominee, if he believes that he's got such a great record, if he believes he's the best person to go against Joe Biden, then show up on Wednesday night. And stop being such a coward.
Yeah, he plays macho man. You're right. He always has. But there's so much overcompensating. But again, afraid to even show up to debate. I'm wondering, Governor, Ron DeSantis's memo, the memo from the super PAC said that he needed to go after Vivek the fake. A lot of emphasis on Vivek, who, from what I've seen, is up to his neck. A very, really talented guy. I've talked to him on the phone early in the campaign, but it seems that he trots out one conspiracy theory after another conspiracy theory. I'll be honest with you, for somebody young and talented, I don't understand why he's doing that. Can you help me understand better why he seems to be interested in trotting out all of these conspiracy theories, and even asked whether Neil Armstrong landed and walked on the moon? He said, well, I have no evidence to suggest he did not. So for now, yes.
Yeah, no, look, I can't explain it, to tell you the truth. I really can't. And maybe he'll explain it to us on Wednesday night. But I think the bigger question is, Joe, if you're Ron DeSantis and you've been the leading contender for months and months and months now, why that's what you're focused on? And why is your strategy to defend Donald Trump? I mean, look, Joe, the guy's going to be, by the time we get on the stage Wednesday, it's possible that Trump could be out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions: New York, Florida, Washington, D.C., and Atlanta. I mean, I don't think that's a calling card for a strong front runner for President of the United States to be out on bail. I mean, what's sort of the first question be for Bret Baier? Could you review for the voters your restriction releases, what you can and can't do while being released from custody?
Oh, my God.
I mean, and yet we got DeSantis focusing on Vivek and saying he wants to defend that. I don't want to defend that, Joe. I want to be on that stage to say to the voters in the Republican Party, let's stop normalizing this conduct. This is not normal. And whether you believe that these prosecutions are fair or unfair, strip that away for a second. Is this conduct the kind of conduct, because he doesn't deny the conduct, is this conduct the kind of conduct you want from a president of the United States? And I don't think it is.
Governor Christie, this is Jen Psaki. I wanted to ask you to put your legal hat on here, which I know you do on a regular basis, because Trump's lawyers have requested now to move the date of the trial, or one of the trials, I should say, until 2026. And they've made the argument in a very creative way that they need years to go through discovery and all these documents. What do you think of their proposed timeline? And tell us a little bit more about how that process typically works and how much time you actually think they might need.
Well, Jen, I'm actually surprised that they didn't ask for a trial date 6 months after his death certificate was signed. I mean, I got to tell you the truth. I don't get it. You don't need that much time at all. And the fact is that I think that this judge will probably settle in on sometime the summer of 2024. I think if you give them anywhere from 10 months to 12 months, that is more than enough time to get ready for a single defendant case. Now, granted, there are lots of documents, but that's the nature of today's criminal practice. There are always going to be lots of documents with the existence of email and text messages and WhatsApp and all of the rest of that stuff. So there will be a lot of paper. But the fact is, you also have tools like electronic searching through these documents that you never had before. And it's not like they're sitting there and rustling through, 10 rooms full of paper. It's all electronic and they can get through it. So I think I don't think a January trial date was ever realistic in this. I think that probably is too tight. But I would think anywhere from April to July, somewhere in that time frame would be fair to the defendant. And also remember, the public has an interest in a speedy trial also, Jen. Their desire is to get this thing resolved, and the public has a right to have answers in this case as well. So that speedy trial right runs both ways.
Governor John Heilman is with us. With a slight delay, he has a question for you. John.
Sure.
Hey, Governor, I want to, as long as we're going to talk about the law here and not strictly about politics, I want to frame this question for you in a slightly different way on these cases that the former president is facing, which is, you have some experience as a prosecutor, as everyone knows, and are someone who I think a lot of people would say knows your way around cases of this kind, not just in terms of how they play out, but in terms of their relative strength. We now know the president's been indicted in these 4 different cases. If you had to run one of them, if you had to be in charge as a prosecutor of one of them, the strongest case, the case you thought you could most obviously win, which one would it be?
It would be the classified documents case, John, for 2 reasons. Because it is extraordinarily clear law that you're not allowed to take classified documents out of the White House after you're president. And secondly, the obstruction is so clear. You can prove the obstruction of justice through the notes of his own lawyer. And video from his own surveillance cameras. That's pretty good stuff. And then lastly on that case, you have a videotape, or an audio tape rather, of him showing classified documents to people who are not cleared to do it. So when those 3 things, that's the case that if I were going to look at the 4 and pick which one I wanted to try personally, give me that classified documents case. And I say one other thing, John, I wouldn't have even charged the documents. I would have just charged the obstruction, and then you wouldn't have had all this stuff about who's going to get cleared to see classified documents and how you're going to clear the jury and all the rest of it. This is such a clear obstruction of justice case that would have been sufficient. And that's a case that they probably could have tried, late this winter if they had charged it just that way. And I think Jack Smith made a strategic error in charging all that he did. But factually and legally, it is still the strongest case.
Governor Christie, Jonathan Lemire here. Wanted to ask you about the Georgia case. Many have pointed out that this one, of course, is different. It's a state case. It's not federal like the classified documents case. It's not federal like Jack Smith's January 6th investigation. Therefore, were Donald Trump to be elected president again, he wouldn't be able to self-pardon. He wouldn't be able to tell his attorney general to cease and desist the matter. But you deemed that case, the Georgia case this week, you deemed it unnecessary. So with all of that in mind, can you explain why you think that?
Yeah, because it's not a prosecutor's job to figure out whether someone, if convicted, could ultimately be pardoned by a political authority. That's not your job. Your job is to investigate a case, to look at the facts and then to look at whether or not there are prosecutions anyplace else and then make the decision about whether to charge or not. I have no problem with Fani Willis charging all of the other defendants that she charged, because Jack Smith chose not to charge those people. But he did charge Donald Trump for essentially the same conduct that on the federal side that he's now charged with on the state side. And I think that she didn't need to do that. And if there was real cooperation between the prosecuting authorities, they would have decided which person's going to take the Donald Trump case, which person's going to take the case against the others, divided it up that way and moved forward. And that would have been more efficient justice, and I think been perceived as a fairer way to approach it. And when you do it the way she did it, it makes people think you're trying to game the pardon authority. And simply, Jonathan, not our job as a prosecutor to try to game the constitutional political authority. That's not our job.
Yeah, hey, Governor, I'm just curious, just on a personal level. I know that when I was running for office 4 times, if somebody had accused me of something I was not guilty of, I would have been rushing to the courthouse. I would be telling my lawyer, get your, you know what, together, get it together, line it up, and tell the judge, I want to be in there next blanking week. I want this trial to go as fast as possible because I'm going to bury the prosecution, and then I'm going to take the document, I'm going to campaign on it, and I'm going to talk about the lies told against me. The last thing I would ever do is say, well, let's just let this hang over the campaign. Let's maybe get to it 2 years from now. I'm just saying, on a human level, as a politician, Donald Trump saying he wants to delay this for 2 years after the election doesn't sound like a guy who thinks he's innocent, does it?
Nope.
No, it doesn't. And that's why, why I was saying earlier, Joe, he really hasn't denied any of the conduct charged here. He just, quibbles with how it's being characterized as a violation of the law. And as we know, Donald Trump's understanding of the law is completely self-serving. And so he decides that he doesn't want to get charged with something. Therefore, what they're doing is deranged or partisan or any of these things. Look, the fact is, and I thought one of the more interesting things that Bill Barr did say last night in the interview that he gave was that he was being told, he meaning Donald Trump, was being told by Barr, other members of the Justice Department, and by White House counsel Pat Cipollone, that if he continued to do these things in the post-election period regarding interfering with the election results, that he was going to be involved with the criminal justice system for the rest of his life. Now, that's a problem for Donald Trump in another way. He can't claim ignorance here. He can't claim he didn't know that he was treading on or over the line, because his own lawyers in his own Justice Department and his own White House counsel were telling him, you need to stop this, sir, because what's going to happen here is you're going to wind up in criminal problems. He should have listened to his lawyers back then. And now what he should be doing is trying to cut the best plea deal that he can, or otherwise he's going to be exposed to real criminal consequences over the course of the next year to 2.
Final question, Governor. Why do you want to be president of the United States?
Joe, because I want our country to go back to doing big things. We have become so small in the way we divide ourselves, pit ourselves against each other, small in the issues that we're arguing about. Look, we've got big things to deal with in the entitlement programs, big issues to deal with on getting our economy back where inflation is manageable for people. Big things to do around the world in terms of standing up to authoritarian dictators like Putin and Xi and Kim Jong-un and the mullahs in Iran. We have big issues that we need to deal with when a third of our kids don't read at grade level in this country. We need to radically change our educational system. And when you look at every key moment, Joe, in our nation's history, when we've been confronted with huge problems like this, we've elected big leaders like Washington, Lincoln, FDR, Ronald Reagan, who went in, and whatever you thought of them on the way in, on the way out, you looked at it and said, because they dared us to sacrifice and do big things, that our country was bigger, stronger, richer, and freer when they were done. That's the kind of president I'm going to be, and that's why I'm running.
Well, and I just have to say this, just because of the presidents you named. Of course, George Washington, father of the country. Abraham Lincoln talked about America as the last hope for a dying world. You had FDR saying the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Ronald Reagan constantly telling us, I believe that America's greatest days truly do lie ahead. Those are presidents that were transformative because they were hopeful. We don't see that enough now, Governor, do we? We don't see people being hopeful enough anymore.
No. We have a bunch of people running for president, many of whom are running because they're cynical. Many of whom are running because they see a moment of opportunity where they might take advantage to give themselves power. I can tell you I'm running because I believe what Reagan believed, that this country, when challenged by a leader who knows how to challenge their citizens, that this country will rise to even greater heights. And I wouldn't trade the hand of cards that America has for China's at all on any level if we do what we need to do in terms of challenging each other to be the best that we can be. I absolutely believe in an America that's going to be greater tomorrow than yesterday, but only if we stop electing leaders who are either incompetent to do that or unwilling because of their narcissism to be able to do it.
Couldn't agree more. Bet against America, you always lose. Former New Jersey governor and Republican presidential candidate Christie, thank you so much for being with us. And still ahead on